The moment they reached it, he stepped out of the shadows, calm, waiting. The traitor. He looked exactly as Katrina remembered. Sharp features, eerie stillness, a man who dealt in secrets like others dealt in gold. But something was wrong. His eyes were darker now, as if something had hollowed him out and filled the space with shadows. Katrina went rigid, primal rage flooding her veins. The shadows around her rippled violently, responding to her fury. The trader's smile spread slowly, a knife cut across his face. I wondered how long before you came back. Shade's grip on his greatsword tightened until his knuckles cracked. Lyra shifted her stance, measuring the trader like a predator sizing up dangerous prey. But Katrina, she was already moving. Her blade sang through the air in a killing arc. And the trader disappeared. Not into shadows. Not with magic she recognized. This was something else entirely. A rippling distortion in reality itself. A void where magic shouldn't exist. Black Dawn. They'd done something to him, something unnatural. Katrina spun, scanning wildly, rage making her voice roar. Coward! A low, mocking chuckle echoed from everywhere and nowhere, fading into nothing. Then, the fortress shifted. Doors slammed open on either side of the passageway. Hidden alcoves revealed figures stepping from the darkness. Draven's elite guard. 10 of them, not mercenaries, not cannon fodder. These were his best. Their black armor seemed to drink in the torchlight, and their weapons, those impossible weapons, hummed with unstable power. No words, no threats, just pure violence. The first elite lunged at Katrina, his weapon trailing streams of distorted reality. She dodged by a hair's breadth, but as the blade passed, she felt reality itself ripple, like the weapon was tearing holes in the fabric of existence. Not normal steel, not normal magic. This was something much, much worse. Bianca's drone picked up the explosion from the LPOP. Her voice cracked through the comms, urgent and strained. "We see the blast! What the hell happened? Do you have pursuit?" Shade's voice came back ragged between heavy breaths. "Oh yeah, we've got pursuit. Open that damn portal now." "Trying." Jewell's voice was tight with concentration. "Too much interference. Get to the rendezvous and hold position." Draven's forces were closing in. The team ran. The portal was their only way out, and then Shade went down. The shot came with a high-pitched whine, followed by searing impact. He barely registered the sound before something slammed into his leg. A burning jolt of pain shot up his thigh, and his momentum sent him crashing into the ground. "Shade!" Katrina spun instantly, but he was already gritting his teeth trying to push himself up. His leg wouldn't respond. The wound wasn't just burned, the energy had disrupted his nerves. Lyra cursed viciously. "We don't have time for this." More enemies were closing in. They had maybe 30 seconds before they were overwhelmed. Ashley's voice snapped over comms, sharp as a blade. "I have eyes on you. Get down now." Shade didn't hesitate. He dropped flat. Then Ashley opened up. The 240B thundered from the high ground, the suppressed bursts thump-thump-thumping in rapid succession. Beta launched into the fight, a grey blur of fury and fangs. She slammed into the closest elite, her massive jaws clamping down on his arm, yanking him off his feet with brutal force. The elite's weapons weren't built for wolves. The man screamed as Beta thrashed violently, armor crumpling under her strength. Katrina and Lyra didn't waste the opening. They turned into the fight, weapons flashing. Draven's elites were well-trained but not fast enough. Katrina's katana danced between them, her blade finding the weak points in their armor with lethal precision. Each strike severed tendons, cut through weapon arms, dodged return strikes with impossible speed. Lyra moved like a demon unleashed. Her twin blades found gaps in armor that shouldn't exist, slicing through flesh before her targets could register she was behind them. Her usual smirk was gone, replaced by cold focus. The line was holding, but Shade still couldn't move. Jewell and Lieutenant Aerendil burst from cover, sprinting toward him. Jewell's medical bag slapped against her side as she slid to her knees beside him. Hold still, dumbass, she muttered, ripping open a vial of enchanted salve and pressing it against the wound. Shade grunted in pain. Not a lot of choice here. The wound smoked where she applied the salve. The magic inside it fought against her treatment like a living thing. It's interfering with healing, Jewell growled, frustration evident. Aerendil raised his bow, covering them. Another elite broke through the fight, raising his rifle. Aerendil's arrow found the man's throat before he could pull the trigger. Can you stand? The elf grabbed Shade under the arm. Shade's face was tight with pain. Not sure that's an option. Bianca didn't hesitate. She grabbed the drone, the extra explosives, and the relay equipment, throwing everything through the portal. Not leaving this behind, she snapped. Ashley kept firing, her 240B providing the covering fire they desperately needed as Aerendil and Jewell dragged Shade toward the portal. Katrina and Lyra were still fighting, the last line of defense. Beta's jaws snapped around another elite, shaking him violently before throwing him aside. Then Ashley's voice cut through the chaos. I'm empty. That was their cue. Go, Katrina ordered. Lyra turned on her heel, disengaging first. Katrina backpedaled, her blade flashing one last time before she sprinted after her. They were almost there. Cover! Ashley's voice ripped through the comms. The ground erupted, but through the flames something massive emerged. Not just a soldier, a monstrosity of advanced armor and augmented flesh. 8 feet of enhanced muscle and magical grade hardware. Its armor pulsed with the same unnatural energy as their weapons, but stronger, more refined. A super soldier. One of Draven's elite experiments. It moved faster than something that size had any right to. One moment it was in the flames, the next, it slammed into Lieutenant Aerendil with bone-crushing force. But Aerendil wasn't just any warrior. Centuries of combat experience kicked in. He rolled with the impact, turning the momentum into a fluid counterstrike. His elven blade sang through the air, enchanted steel meeting augmented armor in a shower of sparks. The blade didn't break, it drew blood. The super soldier roared, the first sound they'd heard it make. It swung a massive fist, each punch leaving trails of distorted reality in its wake. Aerendil dodged the first 2 strikes, his movements like liquid grace. The third caught him in the ribs with a sickening crack. But even as he staggered, his left hand came up, fingers weaving complex patterns, ancient elvish words cut through the air. The ground beneath the soldier erupted with magical force. The thing stumbled but didn't fall. Instead, its armor began absorbing the magic itself. The armor! It's drinking his spells! Bianca shouted, yanking her battle axe free. Lyra was already moving. Then let's give it indigestion. She struck like a viper, both blades finding gaps in the armor's joints. The super soldier spun with terrifying speed, backhanding her into a fallen column. Katrina's shadows writhed. Together! Katrina's shadows struck first, wrapping around the super soldier's legs. Her blades sparked against its armor, searching for weak points. The super soldier's fist caught Katrina square in the chest, sending her flying into a broken column. Before she could recover, it was on her, energy blade materializing from its gauntlet, arcing down for a killing blow. No! Aerendil's voice cut through the chaos. The ancient elf moved with impossible speed, centuries of combat training crystallizing into a single moment. Diving in, pushing Katrina clear, taking the energy sword straight through his own chest. No! Katrina's scream tore through the night. The super soldier tried to wrench its blade free, but Aerendil's hands locked around its arm, holding it in place. Blood stained his lips as he looked at Katrina. Your people need their queen. That's when Lyra struck. Her twin blades found the joints in the soldier's armor, ice and fire working in lethal harmony. The thing roared, trying to shake her off. Bianca's battle axe came next, powered by rage and grief, biting deep into the monster's shoulder joint. Sparks and hydraulic fluid sprayed as augmented flesh gave way. Katrina rose, shadows writhing around her like living things. Her blade moved with killing precision, finding the gaps Lyra and Bianca had created. The super soldier was strong, but it couldn't fight all three at once. Every time it turned to face one attacker, the others struck. Bianca's axe severed hydraulic lines. Lyra's blades froze and burned through enhanced muscle. Katrina's sword found vital points with surgical accuracy. Finally, Lyra vaulted over its shoulders, driving both blades into the base of its skull. Bianca's axe took out its knee. And Katrina's blade punched straight through its throat. The thing collapsed, twitching. But victory meant nothing. Aerendil lay in a growing pool of blood, the energy blade's damage too severe for healing. "Lieutenant!" Bianca rushed to him, already trying to lift him. "The realm—" He coughed, eyes fixed on Katrina. "Your people wait. In darkness." Bianca lifted Aerendil carefully but quickly, his blood soaking through his elvish armor where the energy blade had struck. The lieutenant's breathing was shallow, labored. "Hold on!" Bianca said through gritted teeth, moving as fast as she dared toward the portal. Ashley's voice cut through the comms. "More hostiles incoming!" Beta's snarl confirmed the warning as shadows moved through the ruins behind them. Lyra and Katrina covered their retreat, blades ready as they guarded Bianca's path to the portal. In the distance, they could hear the sound of Draven's reinforcements approaching. "Tell Alfheim." Aerendil coughed, blood staining his lips. "I did not break faith." "Tell them yourself," Bianca muttered, pushing forward. They reached the portal. Jewell had already helped shade through, with Ashley and Beta providing cover. Bianca carried Aerendil through first. Katrina turned to follow, then realized Lyra wasn't moving. "Lyra!" Lyra stood facing the approaching forces, her stance shifting subtly. "Go." Katrina took a half-step forward. "Lyra." "I know what I'm doing," Lyra said softly, her usual smirk gone. A heartbeat passed. Then she did the one thing Katrina didn't expect. She reached to her belt, pulled her enchanted fire dagger free, and tossed it toward Katrina. Katrina caught it instinctively, blinking in surprise. Lyra shrugged. "Give that to Red for me, she had dibs." A heartbeat passed. Then she turned. Lyra picked up the fallen trooper's rifle, testing its weight as the energy core hummed to life. "Lyra," Katrina started. Lyra didn't let her finish. She flashed one last smug smile over her shoulder. "Tell Red I'm sorry for everything." Then she pulled a charge from her belt, knelt by the portal's base, and set the timer. 60 seconds. Katrina's heart pounded. Lyra wasn't coming back. "Lyra!" But Lyra was already moving, charging toward the reinforcements alone. The portal wavered. Katrina stumbled back, into the portal's pull. The last thing she saw was Lyra's silhouette against the ruins, still holding that stolen rifle. Then the portal snapped shut, and Lyra was gone. Cold air, the scent of lake water, the crackling hum of the portal fading. They hit the ground hard, the team tumbling onto the damp sand as the magic flared behind them, sealing off the ruined fortress and the battle they'd barely survived. The night air was sharp and cold, biting through sweat-soaked clothes. Jewell was already moving, her medical bag hitting the ground beside her. Shade groaned, rolling onto his back, his body seizing up as the energy wound crackled with residual static. He tried to push up, but his leg gave out. Katrina landed beside Aerendil, her hands already pressing against the wound in his chest. Too much blood, too deep. She grabbed a field dressing from Jewell's bag, trying to stop the bleeding, her hands slick with red. Aerendil breathed shallowly, his silver eyes barely focused. A queen should not be on her knees, he rasped. Katrina's hands shook. "Shut up and breathe, Aerendil." "Forget me! Work him!" Jewell reached for Shade first, but he shoved her off, his voice a raw snarl. "Help him!" He tried to sit up, but gritted his teeth as pain lanced through his body. Bianca was already moving, dropping beside him, grabbing the trauma kit. "You're an idiot," she muttered, ripping open a pack of stabilizer foam and pressing it against the wound. Jewell barely glanced at Shade again. Her focus was on Aerendil. She knelt beside him, her hands pressing gently against the wound. "I'm here, Lieutenant. Just breathe." Katrina was still working, her fingers fumbling with bandages. "We can... if we..." Jewell met her eyes, steady, calm, unwavering. Katrina's heart stumbled in her chest. She knew, but Jewell didn't say it. She just worked, her hands steady. "Stay with us, Aerendil." His breathing shuddered. His fingers twitched, reaching out. Katrina grabbed his hand, clutching it tightly. "Echo 1, we need emergency evac. Now." Ashley's voice cracked over the comms. "Echo 1, we're through. We have 2 down. Repeat, we need an evac. Now." Katrina snatched the radio from Ashley, her voice tight, urgent. "Gunner, we need immediate evac. Shade is down but stable. Aerendil is critical. We need a direct portal to medical now." Silence. Then, Gunner's voice sharp as a knife. "Repeat that." Katrina's throat was tight. "Aerendil is down." A beat. "Stand by," Gunner said. The line cut. At the workshop, Gunner lowered the comm, his jaw locked tight. Eli was already scanning her tablet, pulling up portal data. Gunner exhaled sharply, grabbing his talesman, calling out for Aeliana. Aeliana's voice answered immediately, sharp and controlled. "What happened?" "Aerendil is down. We need a portal. Now." There was a pause. Then Aeliana's voice, tight with something deeper. "Stand by." The air split open as a new portal flared to life, light washing over the sand, illuminating the team in an eerie silver-blue glow. Through it. Gunner stepped through first, rifle grip tight, his expression dark. Eli followed, tablet still in hand, already scanning for anomalies. Darren came next, his usual smirk gone, eyes sharp as he assessed the battlefield. Rose stepped through last, and then, she counted, 1, 2, 3. Her stomach twisted. She did a second count. Her heart stopped. "Where's Lyra?" Nobody answered. Katrina didn't look up. The wind howled off the lake, and Jewell kept working, her hands steady. "But Rose?" Her fingers curled into fists. Her voice was low, dangerous. "Where is Lyra?" Katrina closed her eyes for half a second, then, quietly, she stayed behind. Rose went completely still. "You left her." The words were quiet, sharp. Katrina's gaze snapped up. She chose to stay. Rose took a step forward. "And you just let her?" Katrina's breath hitched, just for a second, before she could answer. The portal behind them flared again. Jewell hadn't stopped working. Her hands were still on Aerendil. Her voice was soft, steady. "We're almost home, Lieutenant." Aerendil's lips moved, but his voice was too faint to hear. Bianca hauled Shade up, helping him limp toward the portal. Gunner moved to help with Aerendil. Katrina turned toward the portal. But Rose didn't move. She was still staring at the space where Lyra should have been. Eli's voice cut the silence. "Move. Now." One by one they stepped through, but Eli and Darren stayed behind. As the portal flickered one last time, Gunner glanced back. He didn't need to say it. Eli nodded. "We'll get everything sorted." Darren sighed, rolling his shoulders as he turned to face the shoreline, now littered with hastily thrown gear, weapons, and supplies. "Great. So while they're getting patched up, we get clean-up duty." Eli ignored him, already sweeping the area with her scanner, marking locations of anything important. Gunner's voice filtered through the comm before the portal fully closed. "Recover what's intact. Anything compromised, destroy it." Darren smirked slightly. "I do love when he gives me permission to break things." Eli didn't even look up. "Just work fast. I don't like how exposed we are here." The portal flared open inside the Echo Division medbay, the shimmering light casting long shadows across the sterile, well-lit space. The medical team was already in position, gurneys prepped, hands steady, expressions unreadable but efficient. They had done this before, but this time, the stakes felt heavier. Bianca and Ashley moved fast, guiding Shade onto a gurney. Jewell, still holding pressure on Aerendil's wound, didn't stop moving, even as the medics took over, seamlessly working around her. BP's dropping. Breath sounds weak. We're losing him. The words were clipped, clinical, but Jewell heard everything. She knew. She had known back on the sand. Aerendil weakly opened his eyes, his breath barely audible. Jewell leaned in closer, voice steady. "You're home, Lieutenant. Just hang in there." But even as she said it, she knew he wouldn't. Gunnar stood at the far end of the med bay, watching the scene unfold. His expression never changed, but his fingers gripped his comm unit tight. He wasn't one for prayers, and Aerendil needed more than a medic right now. He punched in the secured line to Aeliana, his voice gravel and steel. "Aeliana, we need you." A beat of silence. Then, her voice calm but edged with urgency. "What happened?" Gunnar exhaled sharply, his grip tightening. "Aerendil is down. It's bad." Another pause, and this time her voice wasn't calm. "I'm coming." The line went dead. Gunnar closed his eyes for half a second, then turned back to the medbay floor. They were running out of time. The air in the medbay was thick with tension. The medical team worked fast, but it wasn't enough. Aerendil's breathing shallowed, his fingers twitching against the blood-stained sheets as his body fought, but failed. Jewell leaned over him, her hands steady, her voice low but firm. "You're home, Lieutenant," she murmured. "Just hold on." Katrina was at his side, her fingers gripping his arm, her violet eyes burning with unspoken grief. Aerendil's lips moved, barely a whisper. A name, a warning, a farewell. Then the monitors flatlined. Jewell froze. The med team went silent. Katrina's breath hitched, and then the portal flared. Aeliana stepped through, silver robes billowing, her expression sharp, expectant. Then she saw the flatline, and she moved. The moment Aeliana reached him, the air changed. Her hands moved quickly, pressing over his chest, glowing with an ancient silver-blue radiance as she whispered something in Elven. A command, a plea, a demand. The magic pulsed, flickering across Aerendil's form like a dying ember trying to reignite. His body jerked slightly, a reflex, a flicker of something. Then, nothing. The magic faded. The flatline didn't change. Aeliana's hands stilled, her breath caught. The room was silent. And for the first time, Aeliana Vale, guardian of Alfheim, a being of grace and wisdom, lowered her head, her hands curling into fists over Aerendil's still chest. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "No." Katrina turned away sharply, her breath uneven, but she didn't leave. Jewell closed her eyes briefly, exhaling through the weight of failure. The med team backed off slowly, respectfully, but Aeliana didn't move. For a long moment she just stared down at Aerendil's lifeless form, her fingers trembling slightly, the last traces of magic flickering away like dying starlight. Then she stood abruptly, turning on her heel, and when she spoke, her voice was sharp, bitter, uncharacteristically cold. "He should not have died." The words cut through the silence like a blade. Her head lifted, her piercing blue eyes flashing with something rare. Anger. Her gaze snapped toward Gunnar, toward Katrina, toward Jewell, toward the entire room. "Your world fights alone because the Council refuses to see what is coming. They sit in their halls, weaving words instead of wielding steel, and they let him." Her voice caught. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to continue. "They let him die." A rare fury burned in her expression. It was not rage, not reckless anger. It was something deeper. It was a guardian who had reached her limit. The Council had hesitated too long, and now an elven warrior had fallen on Earth's soil. This would not be forgotten. This would change everything. Gunnar had been watching her carefully. He had seen people break before. But this was different. She wasn't just angry, she was grieving. And it wasn't just Aerendil. It was the Council's failure, the weight of every battle she fought alone, the realization that she had tried, again and again, to make them see, and they had ignored her. And now, this. He took a step closer. "Aeliana," he said, voice low, steady. She didn't look at him immediately, her shoulders tense, her breath shallow. But when she did, her expression was raw. He reached out, his cybernetic fingers brushing against her wrist, grounding her. Not in command, not in strategy, just in this moment. "You did everything you could," Gunnar said. "No orders, no tactics, just truth." Aeliana's breath shook. For a second, just a second, she let herself lean into the touch. It was barely anything, a fraction of a moment, but it was real. Then she pulled away, not sharply, not coldly, just carefully. She closed her eyes briefly, drawing in a breath, regaining her composure. When she opened them again, the Guardian had returned, but Gunnar had seen the woman underneath. And for the first time, she had let him. The moment Aerendil's life faded, the pack knew. It started with Alpha. The massive wolf, Gunnar's bonded companion, lifted his head from his usual spot near the training grounds. His ears twitched, sensing something beyond sight, beyond sound. Then, slowly, he howled. A deep, mournful cry, one that cut through the night and sent a chill through the air. Omega and Beta joined seconds later, their own voices rising into the darkness, a sound that carried loss, respect, and remembrance. Their voices echoed across the Echo Division compound, reaching every member, every soldier, every spirit connected to the pack. It was a sound of honor. Aerendil had fought beside them. Now he was gone, and the pack would not forget. Aeliana heard it from the medbay, her hands clenched at her sides, her jaw tightening as she stared at the still form of the fallen warrior. She whispered something so quiet only Gunnar heard. "May the stars guide you home, my friend." Gunnar said nothing. He simply stood beside her as the howls continued to mourn the fallen.